Family dinners at my sister's house were like performance art. If performance art involved overpriced wine, passive-aggressive comments about my career choices, and enough fake smiles to power a dental convention. But this particular Sunday evening in October, sitting around Lydia's mahogany dining table that probably cost more than my car, I was about to discover just how much of a performance it really was. "Julian, you simply must try the salmon," Lydia announced, her voice carrying that particular tone she'd perfected since marrying Trevor, the one that suggested she'd personally wrestled the fish from the Columbia River while wearing designer heels. "It's wild-caught Alaskan. Trevor flew it in specially." Of course he did. Trevor Hines, my brother-in-law for the past 8 years, had never met an expense he couldn't justify or a story he couldn't embellish. Wealth management had been good to him, and he made sure everyone knew it. His BMW sat in the driveway like a monument to his success, perfectly detailed and positioned so you couldn't miss it when you pulled up in your humble Honda Civic. "Looks delicious," I said, cutting into the fish while mentally calculating how much this single meal probably cost. More than I spent on groceries in a month, no doubt. My wife Natalie sat across from me, looking unusually distracted. She'd been quiet during the drive over, claiming work stress, something about budget cuts at the high school where she counseled students. But now, watching her push food around her plate while stealing glances at Trevor, I felt that familiar knot forming in my stomach. The same knot I'd been ignoring for months. "So, Julian," Trevor said, leaning back in his chair with the confidence of a man who'd never doubted his place in the world, "how's the consulting business? Still helping small companies figure out why their computers don't work?" The condescension dripped from his words like honey from a broken jar. I'd started my IT consulting firm 3 years ago after getting laid off from a tech company downtown. It wasn't glamorous work, mostly helping local businesses set up networks and troubleshoot systems, but it paid the bills and gave me the freedom to work from home. "Business is good," I replied evenly. "Just landed a contract with a medical group, upgrading their entire system." "That's wonderful, dear," my mother chimed in from the end of the table. At 72, she still had the energy to attend every family gathering and the memory to recall every slight, real or imagined, from the past 40 years. "Julian's always been so good with computers. Remember when he fixed our printer last Christmas?" "Mom, that was just replacing the ink cartridge." "Still," she said, beaming at me with maternal pride that somehow made me feel both loved and embarrassed. The conversation drifted to safer topics: Lydia's latest redecorating project, Dad's golf game, the weather, standard family dinner fare. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Natalie kept checking her phone, which she never did during family meals. Trevor seemed unusually attentive to her, refilling her wine glass before it was empty, asking about her work with an interest he'd never shown before. And then I dropped my fork. It was such a simple thing. A piece of salmon slipped off, and the fork clattered to the hardwood floor. I bent down to retrieve it, muttering an apology for my clumsiness. Under the table, in the forest of legs and chair supports, I saw something that made my blood freeze in my veins. Trevor's leg was pressed against Natalie's, his expensive Italian leather shoe touching her calf. But it wasn't accidental contact. It was intimate, deliberate. Her knee was angled toward his, and as I watched in stunned silence, his hand dropped down to briefly squeeze her thigh. The wedding ring I'd placed on her finger 7 years ago caught the light from the chandelier above. Time seemed to slow as I straightened up, fork in hand. The conversation around the table had continued, but now it sounded muffled and distant, like I was hearing it underwater. Natalie's face had gone pale, and Trevor's confident smile had frozen into something resembling panic. They knew I'd seen. "Everything all right, Julian?" Lydia asked, her voice sharp with the kind of concern that wasn't really concern at all. I looked around the table, at my parents, still chatting about weekend plans, at Lydia, watching me with calculating eyes, at my wife, who couldn't meet my gaze, at Trevor, who was already pushing back his chair. Let's step out for a few words, Trevor said, his voice steady but his eyes hard. It wasn't a request. The table fell silent. Even my parents stopped talking, sensing the sudden shift in atmosphere like animals before a storm. Natalie's hand trembled as she reached for her wine glass. "Sure," I said, surprised by how calm my own voice sounded. "Let's talk." The October air was crisp as we stepped onto Lydia's front porch, the kind of evening that would normally make me appreciate living in the Pacific Northwest. The street was quiet, lined with similar houses that screamed upper-middle-class success. Perfectly manicured lawns, German cars in driveways, porch lights that cost more than most people's monthly grocery budget. Trevor closed the door behind us and immediately went on the offensive. "Look, Julian, I know what you think you saw in there, but—" "I saw your hand on my wife's thigh," I interrupted, my voice still unnaturally calm. "I saw your leg pressed against hers. So let's skip the part where you insult my intelligence." He ran a hand through his perfectly styled hair, the kind of hair that required a $100 cut every 3 weeks to maintain. "It's not what you think." "Really? What is it then?" Trevor glanced back at the house, where I could see silhouettes moving behind the dining room curtains. The family was probably pressed against the windows, trying to catch pieces of our conversation. Drama was currency in our family, and this was about to make everyone very rich. "Okay," he said, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Yes, Natalie and I have grown close. But it's not some sordid affair, Julian. We connected over shared interests, common goals." "How long?" The question hung in the air between us like smoke from a fire neither of us wanted to acknowledge. "How long, Trevor?" 18 months, he said finally. "But Julian, you have to understand. 18 months. A year and a half of lies, of coming home to a wife who kissed me hello while thinking about another man. A year and a half of family dinners where they sat across from each other, playing their parts while I remained obliviously grateful for Sunday invitations. Does Lydia know?" His silence was answer enough. "Jesus Christ, Trevor. You're destroying 2 marriages here." "No," he said, stepping closer, his voice taking on a harder edge. "You're going to destroy 2 marriages if you don't handle this rationally. Think about what you're considering, Julian. Think about the consequences. Are you threatening me? I'm being realistic. If you go public with this, if you make a scene, I'll have to tell people the truth about your instability, the drinking problem you've been hiding, the way you've been obsessing over Natalie's schedule, checking her phone, following her. I'll have to explain how you've been spiraling since you lost your corporate job." My hands clenched into fists. I don't have a drinking problem, and I've never followed her anywhere. That's not how it'll sound when I explain it to your family, to her family, to the divorce court. The threat was clear, and for a moment, I felt the familiar surge of self-doubt that had plagued me since getting laid off. Maybe I wasn't successful enough, wealthy enough, interesting enough. Maybe I'd driven my wife into another man's arms through my own inadequacies. Then I remembered the storage unit. 2 months ago, acting on instincts I'd tried to ignore, I'd quietly moved our most valuable possessions to a climate-controlled unit across town. Photo albums, important documents, my grandmother's jewelry that I'd planned to pass down to our future children, Natalie's laptop with all her personal files. Everything that mattered was safely locked away under my name only. I'd told myself I was being paranoid. Now I realized I'd been preparing. "Here's the thing, Trevor," I said, pulling out my phone. "I've got 18 months of doorbell camera footage showing you entering my house during work hours. I've got credit card records of hotel visits that don't match your business travel schedule. And I've got something else you probably forgot about." His confident expression faltered. "Last month, when you and Lydia were planning your vow renewal ceremony, remember how you asked me to co-sign the venue contract? Said it would help with the deposit because of my credit score?" Trevor's face went white. $12,000, Trevor. Non-refundable deposit for the grand ballroom at the Riverside Hotel. And guess whose name is on that contract alongside yours? Julian, you wouldn't try me. We stood there in the porch light, two men who'd shared family holidays and birthday celebrations, now circling each other like predators. The suburban street around us remained peaceful, unaware that lives were being shattered in whispered conversations on front porches. "What do you want?" he asked finally. "I want you to stay away from my wife. I want you to figure out how you're going to explain this to Lydia. And I want you to pray I don't decide to share those doorbell videos with your employer. And if I don't," I smiled for the first time that evening, "then you'll find out just how unstable I can really be." I drove home in silence while Natalie sat in the passenger seat, her hands folded in her lap like a schoolgirl waiting for punishment. The radio played soft jazz, incongruously peaceful given the war that had just been declared in my sister's driveway. "Julian," she said finally, as we pulled into our driveway, "we need to talk." "Do we?" Our house looked exactly the same as it had when we'd left 2 hours earlier. Same blue shutters, same flower boxes Natalie had insisted on installing last spring, same welcome mat that now felt like a monument to naivety. But everything had changed. What Trevor said out there. Which part? The part where he admitted to an 18-month affair, or the part where he threatened to destroy my reputation if I didn't quietly accept being cuckolded in my own home? She flinched at the word cuckolded, but I was past caring about her comfort. "It's not what you think," she said, echoing Trevor's earlier words. We didn't plan for this to happen. But it did happen. Yes. The simple admission hung between us as we sat in my Honda Civic, the car Trevor had probably mocked to her during their intimate conversations. I wondered what else they'd laughed about. My wardrobe choices, my modest income, the way I still got excited about landing small business contracts while he managed millions in investment portfolios. "How many times?" I asked. "Julian, please. How many times in our house, in our bed?" Her silence was confirmation enough. I got out of the car and walked to the front door, my hand surprisingly steady as I unlocked it. Inside, everything looked normal. The furniture we'd picked out together, the photos from our wedding and various vacations, the life we'd built over 7 years of marriage. But it was all contaminated now, every memory tainted by the knowledge of her betrayal. "Where are you going?" Natalie asked as I headed upstairs. "To pack." "You're leaving?" I turned to look at her standing in our living room, still beautiful at 39. Still the woman I'd fallen in love with at a coffee shop downtown nearly a decade ago. But now I saw her differently. Saw the calculation behind her concerned expression, the way she'd perfected the art of looking innocent while living a lie. "I'm going to a hotel tonight. Tomorrow I'm calling a lawyer." "Julian, wait. Can't we discuss this rationally? Can't we try to work through this?" "Work through what, exactly? The fact that you've been sleeping with my brother-in-law for a year and a half? The fact that you've been lying to my face every single day? Or the fact that you and he probably plan to wait until after my promotion before dropping this bomb?" Her expression shifted slightly, a micro-expression of surprise that confirmed my suspicion. "That's it, isn't it?" I said, pieces clicking into place. "The promotion I've been working toward with the medical group contract. You were waiting to see if I'd finally make enough money to be worth keeping around. Hedging your bets." "It's not like that. Save it, Natalie. Save it for the divorce proceedings." I packed a suitcase with enough clothes for a week, grabbed my laptop and important files from the home office, and headed for the door. As I passed through the living room, Natalie was sitting on our couch, the couch where she'd probably entertained Trevor while I was out working to support our household, crying into her hands. I felt nothing. At the hotel, I sat on the generic bedspread and opened my laptop. The first email was to the venue coordinator at the Riverside Hotel, canceling the vow renewal ceremony and invoking the force majeure clause I'd noticed buried in the contract's fine print. Family emergency, I explained. Unavoidable circumstances. The $12,000 deposit would be forfeit, but since Trevor's name was also on the contract, he'd be equally liable for the loss. The second email was more complex. I drafted a message to my entire extended family, parents, aunts, uncles, cousins, the whole network of relatives who gathered for holidays and birthday parties. I kept it simple and factual. Dear family, I wanted to inform you that Natalie and I will be divorcing. I discovered this evening that she has been having an affair with Trevor for the past 18 months. I have documentation and evidence supporting this, which I'm happy to share with anyone who has questions about the circumstances. I will not be attending family gatherings where Trevor is present, and I wanted to give everyone advance notice so you can plan accordingly. I understand this puts people in an awkward position, but I felt honesty was the best approach. I appreciate your support during this difficult time. Love, Julian. I attached a few select photos from my doorbell camera. Nothing explicit, but clear images of Trevor entering my house during work hours, time-stamped and dated. Then I added screenshots of credit card records showing hotel charges that didn't correspond to his business travel. My finger hovered over the send button for a full minute. Then I pressed it. Within an hour, my phone started ringing. First my mother, then my father, then various relatives whose numbers I recognized. I let them all go to voicemail. By morning, there would be a family-wide crisis that would make holiday dinner conversations awkward for years to come. But that was tomorrow's problem. My phone buzzed with notifications all night. Missed calls, voicemails, text messages from relatives I hadn't spoken to in months, suddenly very interested in my personal life. By morning, the family group chat that Lydia had created for coordinating holiday plans had exploded with over 200 messages. I scrolled through them while drinking coffee in the hotel's lobby, watching the digital equivalent of a nuclear bomb detonating in slow motion. Is this real? From cousin Sarah. I can't believe Trevor would do this, from Uncle Mike. Poor Julian, from Aunt Jennifer. We need to hear both sides, from my mother, ever the diplomat. Both sides of what exactly? From my father, apparently less diplomatic. And then, buried in the chaos, a message from Lydia that made me smile. You vindictive bastard. Do you have any idea what you've done? Actually, I did. I was finishing my second cup of coffee when my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. Mr. Brooks, this is Amanda Chen from Riverside Hotel Events. I have some questions about the cancellation you submitted last night. What kind of questions? Well, sir, the other party on the contract, Mr. Hines, called this morning trying to reverse the cancellation. But according to our records, both parties need to agree to any changes. He seemed upset when we explained this. I imagine he was. He also mentioned something about legal action, but our contracts department reviewed the force majeure clause you cited, and it appears to be properly invoked. The cancellation stands, and both parties remain liable for the deposit. $12,000, gone. Trevor had probably planned to use that party to announce his divorce from Lydia and his new relationship with Natalie, a grand gesture to show everyone how he'd traded up from my sister to my wife. Instead, he'd just lost enough money to buy a decent used car. Thank you for confirming, I said. Of course, sir. And Mr. Brooks, I hope your family emergency resolves itself. I think it already has. The next call came an hour later, from a number I definitely recognized. Julian? Lydia's voice was strained, barely controlled. We need to talk. Do we? You know we do. What you've done, sending that email, canceling the venue, it's destroyed everything. I didn't destroy anything, Lydia. I just stopped pretending it wasn't already broken. Trevor made a mistake. People make mistakes, Julian. But what you're doing is vindictive and cruel. I laughed, surprising myself with how bitter it sounded. Vindictive? Your husband has been sleeping with my wife for 18 months, and I'm vindictive for not keeping it secret? You could have handled this privately. You could have come to me first, given us a chance to work things out as a family. You knew. The silence stretched between us like a chasm. You knew, didn't you, Lydia? I suspected something, but you knew, and you said nothing. You invited me to family dinners and watched me sit across from them, completely oblivious, while they played footsie under your dining room table. It wasn't like that. It was exactly like that. You enabled this, Lydia. You're as guilty as they are. Julian, please, think about what you're doing. Think about the family. Mom and Dad are devastated. Everyone's taking sides. You're tearing us apart. No, I said, standing up and walking toward the hotel's exit. Trevor tore us apart when he decided my wife was more interesting than his. You tore us apart when you decided to keep his secret. I'm just making sure everyone knows who's responsible for the wreckage. I hung up and drove to my office, a small suite in a converted warehouse downtown where I met clients and stored equipment. It wasn't much, but it was mine, paid for with money I'd earned helping small businesses solve their technology problems. Honest work that didn't require destroying other people's marriages. My assistant, Rebecca, looked up from her desk as I walked in. She was a part-time college student who helped with scheduling and basic administrative tasks, and she had the kind of direct manner that came from growing up in a family that couldn't afford polite euphemisms. "You look like hell," she said. "Thanks. Very professional." "What happened?" I gave her the abbreviated version while checking my calendar for the day's appointments. 3 client meetings, a system installation, and a consultation with the medical group that could lead to my biggest contract yet. "Jesus," Rebecca said when I finished. "Your brother-in-law? That's like extra awful." "Yeah, well, it gets worse. My sister knew about it." "Your family sounds terrible. No offense." "None taken. They are terrible." The morning meetings went well, surprisingly, focusing on other people's problems. Network security, software updates, hardware failures, provided a welcome distraction from my imploding personal life. Technology was logical, predictable. If something was broken, you could fix it or replace it. Human relationships, apparently, were more complicated. It was during lunch that I got the call I'd been expecting. "Julian, this is Marcus Webb from Pinnacle Wealth Management. I'm Trevor Hines' supervisor." My pulse quickened. "Hello, Mr. Webb. I received some concerning information this morning. Anonymous emails with documentation suggesting some personal conduct issues that might affect Mr. Hines' professional standing. I was hoping you might be able to provide some context." Trevor's threat from the night before echoed in my memory. He'd promised to destroy my reputation if I went public with the affair. But I'd never sent anything to his employer. Someone else had taken that step. "What kind of documentation?" I asked carefully. "Photos, credit card records, hotel receipts, the kind of evidence that suggests a pattern of questionable decision-making." "I see. Mr. Brooks, I want to be very clear that Pinnacle takes these matters seriously. We hold our wealth management professionals to the highest ethical standards, both professionally and personally. Our clients trust us with their financial futures, and that trust is built on integrity." "I understand. Would you be willing to meet with me this afternoon, off the record, just to help me understand the full scope of the situation?" I agreed to meet him at 4 o'clock, then spent the rest of the afternoon wondering who had sent those emails to Trevor's employer. It wasn't me, and it probably wasn't Natalie or Trevor. That left family members who'd received my email the night before, and the list of people angry enough to take that step was surprisingly long. At 4 o'clock sharp, I sat across from Marcus Webb in his downtown office, surrounded by the kind of expensive furniture and diplomas that suggested Pinnacle Wealth Management was very good at what they did. Webb was probably 50, with graying hair and the kind of measured speaking style that came from years of delivering bad news to wealthy clients. Mr. Brooks, I appreciate you coming in. As I mentioned, we received some troubling information about Mr. Hines this morning. What kind of information? Evidence of an extramarital affair lasting approximately 18 months. Hotel receipts, photographs, credit card records. The documentation is quite comprehensive. He slid a folder across the desk. Inside were printouts of emails, photos from my doorbell camera, and financial records I recognized from my own investigation. This is very thorough work, Webb continued. Almost professional quality. Do you know who might have compiled this? I have some ideas. Mr. Hines claims this is all part of a vindictive campaign by a disgruntled family member, specifically you. He says you've been unstable since losing your corporate position, that you've been drinking heavily and making accusations. That's not true. I didn't think so. Your reputation in the business community is quite solid, Mr. Brooks. Several of our clients have mentioned your work favorably. That was news to me. The thing is, Webb continued, even if Mr. Hines's personal conduct weren't an issue, which it is, the fact that he's embroiled in a family scandal that's generating anonymous tip packages suggests a serious lapse in judgment. Our clients don't want their financial advisor to be the subject of gossip and speculation. What does that mean for Trevor? It means Mr. Hines will be taking an extended leave of absence while we review the situation. Unpaid, of course. I tried to look sympathetic rather than satisfied. That seems reasonable. There's one more thing, Mr. Brooks. The medical group you've been working with, Pacific Northwest Healthcare Solutions, they're one of our institutional clients. Dr. Martinez spoke very highly of your work when I called to verify Mr. Hines's claims about your professional reputation. You called Dr. Martinez? Due diligence. She mentioned that they're looking for a long-term IT partner for a major system overhaul. Apparently, your proposal impressed them significantly. I left Webb's office with a handshake and the distinct impression that Trevor's attempt to destroy my reputation had backfired spectacularly. Not only had he lost his job, but his accusations had led his supervisor to investigate my professional standing, which had apparently enhanced rather than damaged my credibility. The irony was almost poetic. 3 weeks later, I was sitting in my new apartment, a one-bedroom place downtown with exposed brick walls and windows that actually opened, unlike the suburban house I'd shared with Natalie, when my doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. Since the family dinner incident, my social calendar had simplified dramatically. Some relatives had chosen sides, others had tried to remain neutral, and a few had simply stopped inviting me to gatherings rather than deal with the awkwardness. It was actually quite peaceful. Through the peephole, I saw my niece Chloe standing in the hallway, looking nervous. "Uncle Julian," she called. "It's Chloe. Can we talk?" I opened the door, surprised. Chloe was Lydia's 16-year-old daughter, a sharp kid who'd always been more mature than her age suggested. But I hadn't spoken to her since the family explosion 3 weeks ago. "Hey, kiddo. What are you doing here?" "I need to tell you something," she said, glancing around the hallway. "Can I come in?" My apartment was sparse. I'd taken only what I needed from the house, leaving Natalie with most of our shared possessions. But it felt more like home than anywhere I'd lived in years. "Want some coffee?" I asked as Chloe settled onto my couch. "I'm 16, Uncle Julian." "Right. Soda?" "I'm fine." She took a deep breath. "I need to tell you something about the emails." "What emails?" "The ones that got sent to Trevor's boss, and to the school district about Natalie, and to some other people." I sat down across from her, suddenly very interested. "What about them?" "I sent them." The words hung in the air like smoke from a fire neither of us had expected to start. "You?" "I've been watching this whole thing for months, Uncle Julian. Watching Trevor come to our house when Dad was at work. Watching Mom make excuses for him. Watching you at family dinners looking so oblivious. It was horrible." "Chloe." "No, let me finish. I tried to tell Mom she should say something to you, But she said it wasn't our business. She said families were complicated, and adults had to work things out themselves. But it wasn't fair. You didn't deserve what they were doing to you. I stared at my 16-year-old niece, this kid who'd apparently been carrying the weight of adult secrets, while the actual adults played games with each other's lives. So when you sent that email to the family, I decided to send a few of my own. I'd been taking pictures and keeping records. I know it sounds creepy, but I thought someone should document what was happening in case something like this happened. You sent evidence to Trevor's employer? And to the school district where Natalie works. And to a few of Mom's friends who always talked about what a perfect marriage she and Trevor had. Chloe's voice was matter-of-fact, like she was discussing a school project. I figured if everyone was going to know the truth anyway, they should know all of it. Chloe, that could have serious consequences for people's careers. Good, she said fiercely. They should have consequences. What they did was wrong, Uncle Julian, and everyone just expected you to quietly accept it so the family could avoid embarrassment. I looked at this kid, really looked at her, and saw something I recognized. The same sense of justice that had driven me to expose the affair rather than suffer in silence. The same refusal to accept that some people's comfort mattered more than others' dignity. Are you in trouble at home? Mom's furious, but she can't exactly punish me without admitting she knew about the affair all along. And Dad's filing for divorce, so he's got bigger problems. And Trevor? Chloe smiled, an expression that was both innocent and ruthless. Trevor's been staying at a hotel since Mom kicked him out. Apparently losing your job and your wife in the same week is stressful. What about Natalie? She got suspended from the school district pending an investigation into conduct unbecoming. Something about using school resources for personal communications. Chloe's smile widened. Turns out she was using her work email to coordinate meetings with Trevor. The IT department found everything when they did their review. I should have felt guilty about the collateral damage, the way my decision to expose the affair had rippled outward to destroy multiple lives. But sitting in my clean, honest apartment, looking at my niece who'd refused to be complicit in adult deceptions, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Peace. Are you okay, Uncle Julian? I mean, really okay? You know what, kiddo? I think I am. My phone buzzed with a text message. Dr. Martinez from the medical group. Julian, we'd like to move forward with the full system overhaul contract. Can you meet Monday to discuss terms? 6 figures, the biggest contract of my career, with a client who respected my work and valued my integrity. Good news? Chloe asked, reading my expression. Very good news. She stood to leave, then turned back. Uncle Julian, I'm sorry about what happened to you, but I'm not sorry about what happened to them. After she left, I sat in my apartment as evening settled over the city, thinking about justice and consequences and the strange ways that truth eventually surfaces. My phone rang, Natalie's number, which I'd been ignoring for weeks. This time, I answered. Julian? Her voice was small, defeated. Can we talk? I think we've said everything we need to say. Please. I know I don't deserve it, but I need to explain. Explain what, exactly? That you're sorry you got caught? That you're sorry you lost your job? That you're sorry Trevor chose his career over you when things got complicated? The silence stretched between us, filled with the weight of 7 years of marriage and 18 months of lies. I loved you, she said finally. No, I replied, looking out my apartment window at the city lights below. You loved the idea of me as a backup plan. You loved having someone stable and reliable while you explored more exciting options. But you didn't love me, Natalie. If you had, none of this would have happened. I hung up and turned off my phone. Outside, the city hummed with the energy of people living their lives, making choices, facing consequences. Some of them were probably lying to spouses, betraying friends, choosing comfort over honesty. Others were building something real, something lasting, something worth protecting. Tomorrow, I would start work on the medical group contract. I would continue building my business, creating something valuable through honest effort. I would have dinner with my parents, who had chosen my side in the family civil war. I would take Chloe out for her 17th birthday and thank her for having more integrity at 16 than most adults managed in a lifetime. Tonight, I would sleep peacefully in my own bed, in my own space, surrounded by my own choices. The fork had fallen, the fire had burned, and the fallout had settled. And for the first time in months, I was exactly where I belonged.